Welcome to all the beloveds of God as we gather for devotions on Wednesday, January 27th. As you can see, I am still at the cabin, but the time is coming to a close. I will miss being so totally in nature, not seeing anything except the glory of God's creation around me. I will miss the serenity, the peace, and the quiet of being in this cabin in the woods. On the other side of that, it will be good to be home, good to be back with family, good to begin the long process spiritually of reflecting on all that God has given me in this time, all that I have been able to experience, to pay attention to, and just to allow in the silence God to speak in some very surprising ways. Today we are in 1 John and beginning in chapter 3 at verse 18. I am Heather E. Clausen, pastor of Bethel Lutheran Church and the United Methodist Church, both in Herman, Minnesota. This writing that are called the letters of John, and especially in 1 John, it really is speaking to us about what this life is, this life of love. Let me share these verses and then talk a little bit about it. Beginning at verse 18, chapter 3. Little children, let us love, not in word or speech, but in truth and action. And by this we will know that we are from the truth and will reassure our hearts before him whenever our hearts condemn us, for God is greater than our hearts, and God knows everything. Beloved, if our hearts do not condemn us, we have boldness before God, and we receive from God whatever we ask, because we obey his commandments and do what pleases him. And this is the commandment, that we should believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he commanded us. You know, one of the things I've discovered over the years is we really make this much more difficult, much more involved, much more detailed than it really needs to be. Jesus said, love one another. He didn't leave anyone out. He didn't set aside any group or any person based on any difficulty they had, anything that they had done that was sinful. No. It very simply is love one another as I have loved you. And that passage from 1 John also talks about truth, doesn't it? We can overlay so much over that simple message of Jesus. We can add criteria. We can add rules and regulations. And what we discover in the long run, when we get to purely loving as Jesus commanded us to love, we find that none of that was truth. There has been such a deep and profound message in this time away, a message of what this call means. And it's just as this passage of in 1 John began. It says, let us love, not in word or speech, but in truth and action. Words can be easy. Action can be a lot more challenging. When we say we love, what does it mean? Does it mean I will love you if I approve of you? Does it mean I will love you if you always do everything I ask you to do? Does it mean I will love you if you believe the same way I do? No, we're not given that permission, are we? No. Love one another as I have loved you, simply. Not build up the rules that Jesus fought in the time here on earth. The rules that put a dividing line between people. Who's in, who's out, who's loved, who's not. Who has God's favor, who does not have God's favor. That was the mission here on earth, is to remove those lines and those barriers. It is a time. It is the time for us to make it simple again. To make it exactly as Jesus taught, showed, modeled. Not with layers, not with a checklist that says whether someone is worthy of love or not. Not with a proviso that says, I will love you when. I could love you, but. We're not given that permission, and yet it is so easy for us to do that, isn't it? Because to love, to accept everyone is not easy. And so, sadly, so often we make excuses, don't we? Well, no, I can't love that person because of their choices. I can't love that person because they believe differently than I do. I can't love that person because they look different than I do. I mean, you can add on and on, can't you, to the list? But we make it so difficult. And yet it's very plain and very simple. Love one another as I have loved you, not just in word, but in deed and in action. That is all it is. Do you think I'm saying it's easy? Oh, absolutely not. But we need to stop. We need to grab on to the truth. We need to stop making categories. Stop dividing people. We need to understand how inclusive Jesus was and is. Just read the Gospels. That's exactly who he always went to, were those who had statements made to them, I will love you or God will love you, but. And he didn't do that. Not at all. He kind of picked people up, dusted them off, let them know that God loved them, and sent them forward into life, giving them the recognition of their humanity, their value in God's eyes. And the intent is that that too will be in our eyes. Go in peace. Amen.